Hey everyone, I'm Yamini, and I lead publisher marketing at Google. What that really means is I help publishers make money with ads so that they can fund their content. And today, I want to tell you why I love my job. I love ads. There's a lot of Snickers in the room right now. Probably a lot of you have blockers installed. But truly, deeply, I love ads. I remember, even as a child, I used to look forward to watching the latest commercials from Cadbury's and Pepsi on TV, just as much as I look forward to watching Mickey Mouse and DuckTales on Sunday mornings. So when the time came to make a choice, I decided to start my career working at a creative agency in advertising. And it was a lot of fun. I mean, think about the intellectual challenge of figuring out ways to tell a really compelling story that people will want to relate with in a 30-second commercial. Even harder to do that when you're faced with a fixed rectangle, whether that's in a newspaper, on a computer screen, or today, on a mobile device. But that intellectual challenge is not the only reason why I love ads. I love free access to content. I like not paying NPR for the daily news. I love getting to go to Tumblr and see what happens in ad ops absolutely for free. And all of that is only possible because advertising is the lifeblood of the internet. This free exchange of ideas that we love about the web, all the content out there, is in part, if not entirely, funded by advertising. That said, I do have to face one real fact, and that is that ad experiences, particularly on the mobile web, are really, really bad. I mean, let's face it. You clicked on an article on your phone today, and there's that blank white screen at the top of the page because the ad is still loading. And once the ad loads, the content jumps around the screen a little bit. And when the content finally is in a place where you can find it, or if the ad is something that you can engage with, you click through to a landing page that takes absolutely forever to load. These bad ad experiences is why what I said earlier about loving advertising, that makes it seem so incredulous, right? Ads are important. It's the experiences that are bad and that need to be fixed in order to ensure that the free exchange of ideas, the free access to content that we love about the internet continues to exist. That's why when we kickstarted the AMP project, we realized that we couldn't fix the web if we didn't fix the ads that went on it. And while many of our initial efforts were actually focused on ensuring that the existing advertising technologies out there worked on AMP pages, we knew we had to do more, and we knew that we could do better. So, in parallel, we launched the AMP Ads initiative. What is this initiative? It's about applying the principles of AMP and the AMP framework to make advertising on the web something that's faster, better, something that you don't mind engaging with absolutely at all. It's changing the foundation of digital advertising by shifting the way people build, deliver, and measure ads. So, how does it work? And what's the magic sauce behind it? To talk to this very thing, I would love to now call on stage Vamsi Jasti, who's the AMP Ads lead.
Thanks, Yamini. Hi, everyone. My name is Vamsi Jasti. I am the PM for advertising in AMP. Thanks for being here. So as Yamini mentioned, unfortunately, our industry has dialed up the knob to 11. There is an AMP in the picture. I hope you get it. Anyway, let's look at some of the common problems with ads. First one is excessive drain on battery and CPU. Some badly authored ads typically take up too many resources that don't end up leaving enough resources for rendering the primary content for the user to actually consume their experiences. Some battery tests have shown that ads can drain your phone's battery up to twice as much in a 2-hour session, depending on the type of ad. Why don't we play a quick game? Anyone who can read the next 3 sentences that are going to come up stage wins a free coffee and a T-shirt. Ready? Okay, did anybody get that? This is pretty much the worst thing in the internet. Just when you're about to deeply engage with the content, wham, an ad shows up, and pretty much just serves you from your experience. This is not great. This generates great high viewability, but this is definitely not the perfect way of generating that high viewability. And I think we can do a better job. And finally, the unpredictability of an ad click. It's always a gamble what happens next. Is the click going to open it in a new browser window? Is it going to be a top-level redirect? Or is the next click going to send me to a landing page which is going to install malware on my desktop or mobile page? And that's not great, and it always keeps things interesting, though. So with the AMP Ads initiative, we're building a user experience-first ads ecosystem. What do I mean by that? And it's just jargon speak for saying that we're going to make ads do whatever a reasonable user would expect them to do. So how are we going to do this? By fixing the biggest mistake of display advertising. And that is, when the publisher said, I want you to put an ad on my page, basically the publisher allowed people to, or advertisers or whoever it is in this case, you can run arbitrary JavaScript on my pages. This is a huge problem because the third-party JavaScript has full reign on whatever it wants to do with the rest of the page. And again, taking away from consuming the primary experience for the user. I bet most of us wonder, what if there was a game combined with Super Mario Brothers and Contra, like you do? What if we never allowed third-party JavaScript ads to run on publisher pages? And that's exactly what we're trying to do with AMP Ads. So what is an AMP Ad? An AMP Ad is just a type of an AMP document. The format spec is a subset of the original AMP spec. There's two key differences. The first one is the top-level tag has to have an AMP for ads tag in it. And the runtime is slightly different. Instead of including AMP v0.js, you use AMP for ads v0.js. Right now, they're identical, but in the future, we actually plan to do a bunch of optimizations that are very specific for the ads. And that's it. The ad format spec itself is a bit more restrictive. For example, we don't allow AMP iframes. And the reason for that is we don't want to embed sort of arbitrary third-party JavaScript as part of AMP iframe. But you get the point. We want to make sure we're able to essentially control the entire end-to-end experience. So how does one get an AMP ad onto the web page? So what we've been talking about for the most part is on the left. A publisher has an AMP page. They run it through the validator, and the ad is on the mobile device. Similar to that, on the AMP ad side, the creative developer usually creates an ad using a similar spec and runs it through, and this is the important part, they have to have it validated using a proper sort of signing service. Typically, you can do that with an ad server. DoubleClick, for example, is an ad support, and they're going to do that. Cloudflare, for example, is a huge supporter and willing to sign creatives as well. And once the ad is signed and valid, it's delivered to an AMP page, and therefore combining sort of the AMP page and an AMP ad on an AMP page combination. So now that we have AMP ads, what are the type of problems we can solve with this? I'd like to talk about 3 buckets of issues. The first one is the asymmetric incentives problem. The way I describe it, it is when 2 different parties work on the same problem, but the incentives are not aligned, in that one of the parties is more incentivized to do a lot more work than the other. And this shows up perfectly in a case where a publisher is, or advertisers putting a creative on a publisher page. So typically, the publisher cares about the page performance, and they're like telling the advertiser or a creative agency saying, hey, make sure the creatives are performant. And the ad developer is like, yeah, sure, but there's no way to actually measure what performance is because it's kind of contextless. The advantage of the AMP standard is that once the ad is created, in AMP, even the 90th percentile of the slowest creative can perform much better than normal standards. So in this particular case, New York Times can actually simply tell the ad developer or the advertiser saying, you know what, just give me an AMP creative. And the ad developer doesn't have to care. All they have to do is build a creative that they need, make sure it validates, run it through the validator, and if it runs, they're kind of know for sure that it's always going to be performant. And That's how we pretty much tie this sort of publisher being able to request a standard performant creative and the advertiser being able to deliver it. Next up, we have a similar problem with third parties. The issue with the third-party tags on regular creatives is that there's no sort of orchestration. So for a good example is viewability. Viewability is important. It's what allows display advertising to be much more effective than print advertising, because you can actually say that a person viewed an ad impression versus in non-digital advertising. You can't be sure about that. The problem, though, with viewability and the way it's measured today is, typically a publisher has a viewability script, a third-party JavaScript, and the advertiser puts one because they don't trust the publisher, and the publisher doesn't trust the advertiser. And then there's usually an ad server has their own implementation for viewability. And then there's probably a media ratings agency who wants to have sort of an industry-wide way of saying what the viewability on a certain publisher page is. So they have their own tags. So finally, you have like these 4 JavaScript tags doing very similar things, asking for the same resources, but really not coordinated in those asks. And the one that's ultimately suffering here is the publisher again. We've already solved this in AMP. It's called AMP Analytics. And using AMP Analytics, we can collect all of the viewability information signals and distribute them to any number of endpoints as necessary. The cost of adding an endpoint does not increase linearly. The second bucket of problem is the malicious intent problem. Malware-ridden ads are a huge problem in the publisher industry. It's very hard to argue with someone when they say that, oh yeah, I don't actually like ads because they install malware. I mean, that's pretty reasonable. With the sign AMP ad, we know exactly what's in the ad, and therefore it can't be a problem anymore. Another huge consequence of getting rid of JavaScript that we talked about previously. So wouldn't it be great if the publisher simply said, yep, my site cannot install malware? For the advertisers, that's huge. Their brand is safe, and they're able to advertise with that particular publisher. Also, if you've ever experienced this, which is pretty annoying, auto redirect ads, with AMP, since there's no custom JavaScript being embeddable, auto redirects are not possible at all. The last one's my favorite, which we refer to as the coordination problem. When I think of a browser scheduling and rendering of pages, this is what comes to mind. So there's no sense of priority between the different things that are happening, being requested from the browser. And as you can tell, no one's dying, but things could be much less chaotic, right? With AMP, when an ad is served to an AMP page, the AMP page can orchestrate the entire user experience. Since AMP is opinionated about what's important to the user and pretty much gives preference to the content instead of the ad, really AMP can orchestrate the end-to-end experience of what the user would prefer to see, depending on resource constraints or battery availability. Now let's talk about animations for a sec. Ad animations are what allow ads to sort of have a very a punchline-based advertising messaging, if you will. For example, when a car subtly appears in an ad, or the text appears later than when the car appears, that's kind of what we talk about when we say allow the creative developers to being able to create sort of beautiful ads. One of the issues that exist with animations today is the page actually has no relation or even knowledge about the animations that are run on the page. So it's not uncommon to have an animation run when it is way below the viewport, and therefore, even when there's like bandwidth constraints, for example, but it's just pure wastage. We'll be launching an AMP animations framework soon, which allows ad developers to create beautiful timeline-based animations. AMP can selectively start and stop depending on whether the user is currently viewing a certain ad, or even pause an animation when it realizes that there's too many resources being allocated to the animation versus painting content on the page. And finally, since AMP always gives the priority to things, to give the end user a great experience with proper orchestration, AMP can also eject elements when it realizes that a certain page is stuttering. Now, we've talked a lot about publishers so far. and why it would be a no-brainer for a publisher to adopt AMP ads. And we hope sometime in the future, the publishers would simply say, yep, the only thing that I'm putting on my page are AMP ads. But we're not there yet. But we also should talk about what's in it for the advertiser. So let's talk about some things that are important from an advertiser perspective, first being monetization. So a few months back, TripleLift became the first non-Google ad network to deliver AMP ads in collaboration with Cloudflare. They were able to sign the AMP ads and actually deliver them, as Matthew discussed in the talk today. And you've seen this demo before, but why don't we watch through it again, because the difference is kind of pretty stark. On the left is AMP ads, and the right is regular ads. As you can tell, the difference is kind of incredible. The ads on the left load 6x faster, 3x lighter, and are 13% more viewable. It's also 13% more, driving more CTR and eCPMs for TripleLift when delivered on timings properties. Which kind of makes sense, right? Like if you have an ad and it doesn't even appear before the user scrolls by, obviously the viewability is going to be lower. Obviously the click-through rates is going to be much lower. And our idea is, let's make performant creatives which end up showing on the page, but also they don't impact sort of the rest of the user experience. So another angle we wanted to talk about is, it's not about just boxes and banners. How do you enable a brand tell an amazing story? So we wanted to make sure when we announced the AMP spec for ads that it was pretty, allows people to innovate, allow creative developers to innovate based on that. So based on that, Celtra took the AMP ad spec and built a bunch of amazing looking creatives. Why don't we look at one? Subtle animations, ability to interact, and a way to tell the story beautifully. So AMP ads will work not just on AMP pages, but everywhere on the web. So they can work on other mobile web devices, which are non-AMP. They can also work on desktop pages. And that's what we're really excited about. Even just solving the ads problem for AMP pages is amazing, but as you probably know, there's a lot more non-AMP pages than AMP pages in the world today. And if we can actually fix the ads in non-AMP pages, serving AMP ads to them, I think we would have accomplished a lot. Last but not least, AMP landing pages. So when the landing page is embedded with an AMP ad which is written in AMP, we can do intelligent things like prefetching and pre-rendering. Wonder why the E is down there. Anyway, the best part is the landing page can be triggered with 0 redirect clicks. What I mean by that is if AMP knows that the landing page itself is written in AMP as well, it can get rid of the click redirect and make the click redirect asynchronously because we can trust that the landing page that the user is going to is a trusted domain and delivers from the Cloudflare cache or AMP cache. So why don't we look at this in action? OK. Let's try that again. Just trust me, it's just really fast. You couldn't even see it. Anyway, in summary, here's how the various ad products from the AMP ads initiatives look. So we talked about AMP ads where you have the ability to deliver sort of ads created in the AMP format spec and deliver them to AMP pages. AMP ad embeds where you create an AMP ad, but you're able to deliver to anywhere else on the web, be it regular mobile web or desktop. And finally, the ad landing pages, where you're able to click on the landing page, and the landing page itself is in AMP, and therefore we're able to eliminate things like redirects and prefetch and preload the landing page. The beauty of this solution is they all work independent of each other. So you as a publisher or an advertiser or an advert company can use each of these technologies. But we think the experience will be incredible once you combine all of these in sort of a single system. So I think it's time we standardized, right? This is the marketing technology landscape from 2016. I can't even begin where to start. The ads ecosystem is a complex one. There's a lot of players in the ad industry, and whether we like it or not, ads is kind of the lifeblood of the internet. What we all agree, though, is that we need to work together to fix the existing bad ads that are prevalent in the system. The good news is you can help. We've been working with a number of you on the publisher, advertiser, and the ad tech side to see how we can accelerate AMP ad adoption. The momentum is incredible. We've been working with TripleLift, Cloudflare, Celtra, Google DoubleClick is a huge supporter, and many more joining the effort every single day. So I hope you would come join us in implementing the spec for fixing the display ad system. Thank you.